When thinking about games that have impacted me the most, I tend to prioritize games that are really good at blending a purposeful story with gameplay that emphasizes the themes of that story. And I wanted to do that by bringing to light a game I doubt anybody has ever played, and its subtle artistry that I believe may have been a complete accident. Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie, is single-handedly the greatest movie video game tie-in game in the history of video game movie tie-in games. Better than Aladdin, SNES or Genesis, better than Bad Boys Miami Takedown, better than James Cameron's Avatar, the game for Wii, which I for some reason owned and played way too much. Speaking of getting sidetracked, King Kong has none of that. It's a deceptively simple third-person, first-person hybrid action game that literally only takes 8 hours to beat. It's so stripped down of so many common game design tropes of the time, but it never feels bare bones because it excels at what it does include, and the experience feels enhanced because of what it excludes. This game is in essence a survival horror game, and the most important aspect of that genre is a fear of the unknown, or rather just unraveling a mystery, a steady stream of information. The first few levels are so boiled down to a single point. Chapter 1, The Venture. Basically a cutscene. You're introduced to the layout of the island as you steadily inch closer and closer to it. The sound design takes over as crashing waves and the creaking wood of the boat overshadows the dialogue and you feel lost in this world, just like the characters. Also, it's the only time that I'll get to mention this, but Jack Black plays a character in this game. I mean, the whole cast reprised their roles, but hearing his voice and seeing his creepy, uncanny valley face is amazing. Chapter 2, Skull Island. You have to work with your soon-to-be rotating cast of characters to solve elemental puzzles, using fire to scare away smaller enemies, and opening the first of many, many wooden gates. Chapter 3, Necropolis, doubling down on atmosphere, enemies, environmental puzzles, while squeezing you through a very linear short section, closing you off from the freedom of the coastal area you just came from. Chapter 4, Scorpions. This is where fire-based puzzles really start to come in handy. This and the wall help you understand the layout of the game world in a super intuitive, linear path. Fire on top, I knock it down into the bushes, maybe get my team killed, but that's why I have a game over screen for. Idiot, start over. Chapter 5, 6, who cares? Sacrifice. Basically another cutscene, forcing you to sit and watch the slow buildup as one of your crew is lowered onto this altar. You don't know what's happening, but you start to see lava pour down all around you, creating this heavy veil of smoke between you and her. The drums start beating faster and faster. People start chanting around you. You keep screaming for help, but nobody's coming. And suddenly, a loud thundering boom from beyond the tree line. The scene falls silent. The trees start to part, and this towering behemoth of a creature, eclipsed by smoke, slowly approaches the sacrifice altar and stands on 2 legs, towering over the wall behind you. It pounds its chest and lets out a deafening roar that breaks the layer of smoke between you two. It's awesome. In just a few minutes, everything you've learned and mastered up to this point is dwarfed by this 40-foot tall monkey with a human-woman fetish, and you feel like you're just going to be fighting an uphill battle for the rest of the game. But wait, how does that translate to gameplay? Great question, disembodied voice. The level design is so straightforward, I don't think there's a level in here more than 10 minutes long, and these first few aren't even half that length. The low polygon count makes everything so obvious as to its purpose in a room layout. Spear stashes and ammo boxes are such a drastically different color and shape than anything else. Every destructible part of the environment is a different color and texture, and sometimes even swaying with the wind effects to break it apart from the base of the world. The sound design from approaching enemies is so precise, down to the direction it comes out of your speakers, but it's always so much louder than it probably should be. It's probably an accident, but it never gives me a moment to rest. How is that any fun at all? Stupid question, sit down. It's fun because every time I'm jump scared by a freaking digital velociraptor, my first instinct is always to draw my gun or run to the nearest spear cache rather than assessing the situation and scanning the environment like I would in any other adventure game. There's no HUD, so the only way to see how much ammo you have left is literally pressing B.
I got enough magazines. 2 magazines on backup. 4 magazines on backup. 3 magazines on backup.
I love how Adrian Brody gets more and more panicked as you whittle down your ammo supply.
Last magazine on backup.
Stop wasting bullets, it's just a freaking scorpion. Throw a spear at them and then they get stuck. It's so much more fun. Idiot. The only way to check your health is to try to get eaten by a velociraptor because, dude, Adrian Brody is weak. In like 2 hits, the screen goes red and you're suddenly on the ground, having to poke this dinosaur in the face with a stick to get free. The sound all drowns out and gets really echoed, and you start hearing this angelic choir singing from somewhere in the distance, probably saying, "Get off this freaking island, you suck at this game!" But that difficulty from a lack of clear direction is what makes the game so engrossing. It keeps me from just fighting through every scenario with no consequence. The visuals start to melt around you, and I feel like my boy Adrian probably does in that moment. Beyond dazed and confused, I literally have to run and hide in little shacks that I know they can't reach their stupid oval noses inside. Without having to worry about checking my stats at the corner of the screen, I always have to just rely on what I see in front of me and react to that. My favorite example of this is in the level Brontosaurus, where, spoiler alert, you come upon this path where a herd of freaking Brontosaurus are traveling in a herd. You have to get some fire down the path to burn down an overgrown pathway to progress. You start navigating through these giant dinosaur cankles until you reach the fire. Suddenly the music shifts, and you hear those horribly loud velociraptors coming out of the woodworks, just as the herd kicks into stampede mode. You're suddenly reminded that you have no ammo, only some spears that can carry fire, and a whole lot of flammable bush. You lure the velociraptors into the bushes and set them ablaze, killing them instantly, while still giving yourself some time to grab a new spear and keep the fire going. You rinse and repeat all the way back, now dodging 200 plus tons of oncoming traffic until you reach your starting point and you see one of those gentle giants laying dead in the middle of the path. And then suddenly the screen starts to shake and you hear the sound of a freaking T-Rex that's been following you this whole back half of the game. An enemy which, might I mention, is invincible to you. Well, you as Adrian Brody. Shit, that's right, I need to talk about Kong! Much like how transitioning from playing as Joel to Ellie in the winter chapter of The Last of Us made the player feel a sense of powerlessness, weakness, and overall unfamiliarity nearly halfway through the game, switching from levels where you play as dumb-hole Adrian Brody to playing as King freaking Kong in third person is some of the most dramatic shift in perspective I've ever seen in a game. Getting to take down velociraptors in one hit that would have taken you 4 or 5 good spear throws earlier, or snapping the jaws off not 1, not 2, but 3 T-Rexes at once is so empowering. It's such a strong rush of adrenaline that your entire playstyle starts to shift to be more direct, but you never stay as King Kong for too long, preventing you from getting too accustomed to any particular playstyle. That all gets dragged down to a depressing reality once again when King Kong arrives in New York. You play a few short levels trying to make your way toward the Empire State Building using movies, only to find yourself closed off between narrow streets and an army convoy shooting at you. You can't attack them, all you can do is run. Suddenly all that power is stripped away. You don't play as Adrian Brody for the remainder of the game. No ice skating in the park, thank God, only the symbol of stature and the height of power in the natural world that can be bullied into submission by a few bullets. You're stuck in this downward spiral of falling back into that sense of powerlessness where you began. It's a somber, poetic ending to a game that, on the surface, doesn't appear to have much heart or soul put into it. Now, whether this was by design or was a byproduct of the limitations of the early Xbox hardware is up for debate. But regardless, I know it's something that I'll always find myself coming back to whenever I'm bored and have a few spare hours. Because what game in 2019 can honestly make me feel like I've made a lot of progress in only a couple of hours? Get to the point, game developers!